things that are in. So this is the meeting of the Index Committee of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force on June 6th. We're calling to the meeting to order at just after 2:30 p.m. And first, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. So before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Thank you. So I'm just going to, Jill, you can just let me know when we have a quorum. If you don't mind, I don't think we have too many action items.
We just need one more person.
Oh, well, we'll probably get there then. So I would like to go ahead and start with a report from Perry, an update on where we stand with the hiring of the clinical analyst, and he can fill us in with more specifics of what that really is going to be and where we are with some of the software updates that we're hoping would be funded by the JAG grant.
Pretty sorry, this is Jill here. We have an attendee, it looks like, from the exec's office. I don't know who it is.
Oh, yes,
I'm
because
gonna allow them to speak, and please identify yourself.
I would. And I would hope that this person is replacing Tyler.
Hi, everyone. This is Kayla Shop-Ressler from the executive's office. I didn't have the panelist link, but look forward to.
Yes. So Kayla, will you be attending now that Tyler has left us? I guess we have
I had to turn my camera on and it's not working well. Hold on one second.
That's all right. We have your voice. Will you be?
Bertie, you know, I'm not able to stay for the full meeting today. And I will likely have we will try to have someone from our office attend on a regular basis, but it may not be me. So we'll sort of figure out that formal process later. Yeah.
You're new, but we welcome you. So is there any particular you would like to say to our group since you can't attend the whole meeting?
You know, I was going to let Perry give his update and then sort of chime in on sort of my questions and perspectives as it relates to some of the different data work that.
Excellent. That's really important. We have to work well with you. So appreciate that. Okay, Perry.
Thanks. Jill, do you think you could promote Janice and Rick in as panelists at this point from IT?
Yeah, I can. Doing that right now.
Okay, thank you. Well, I believe I know most everybody and most everybody knows me, but I'm Perry Rice, the Whatcom County IT manager. And then with me today, I have my applications supervisor, Janice Pearson, and also Rick Anderson. There he is in the middle. And so I'm going to do a screen share. I'm a big whiteboarder, so on Zoom meetings, I usually like to screen share.
Great.
All right. Okay, so I had a few back and forths with Bertie, and just to help people, with the position names and stuff like that. In our agenda, it says clinical analyst. Well, what we're actually referring to is the Senior Applications Administrator position, which is a position that in collaboration, support from the County Executive's Office last summer, I put a budget request in, and that I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll read some of the things in the yellow highlight. And the focus was to support the criminal justice software applications across Whatcom County government, and to also support the complex reporting from them.
Right.
Now, why do we need this position? Well, we've added a lot of new systems in the criminal justice system. And I've kind of listed a few here: new medical record system and jail medical, public defender, prosecutor. We don't yet have it in place yet, but we're working on a new superior court or a juvenile case management system. And I see Bruce and Jake on from district court. We're also soon going to be helping them implement that statewide case management system.
Excellent.
That's kind of our initial focus, but we also realize we need to, the task force and the community needs back-end data support from all of these systems to support what we're doing here. And so that is another part of this position. And our outcome was a new senior applications administrator recruited and hopefully filled in 2024. So I think we're well on our way.
Good.
And then the last piece is just to kind of understand, you know, how the reporting structure would be and stuff like that for this person. So it's a position in the county IT division. Like we always do, we work with department heads such as Tank and Bruce and others on their needs. And then if there's ever a challenge, like we've got too much to do, how do we prioritize? We look to the county executive's office for that assistance. And so really for this effort, you know, guidance on the regional data and reporting efforts will be provided by IT management, county executive's office in conjunction with key groups such as this group itself. So that's just kind of how the position was budgeted, the actual title of the position and stuff like that. So now I just kind of want to give a quick update on hiring status.
Okay.
So we actually have my cell phone's ringing. I didn't put it on silence. I believe we actually have identified the perfect person for this role. It's actually it's actually applications administrator. I'm going to change it. Okay, I did some whiteboarding. So Rick Anderson, who is on the Zoom meeting right now, would like to take on this role. And we think he's the perfect person for it because he has been supporting the criminal justice system. He's been with the county for 6 years. He's worked very closely with the sheriff's office, especially Caleb, on a lot of complex reporting from the jail, including kind of he's the back end person for the jail roster webpage. He's also participated in the build out of a lot of new systems within the last 3 years. So, you know, he knows these departments, their systems, jail medical, some other stuff in the sheriff's office there, public defender, case management. And then he'll be a key player in the juvenile and new state right system for courts of limited jurisdiction. So he's very involved in that, but he's also very involved in a lot of non-criminal justice applications. He's our main web person, very focused on communication tools, our document management system, public works fleet, and a lot of other things. So what we're going to need to do now is, you know, backfill Rick's position And been working with HR, and we're expecting that posting to be within a week. And and then we'll kind of go from there. Rick will definitely be available to start working on things. We just won't have his full capacity for entire focus on the criminal justice system until we can backfill.
Right.
So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. But I'm really glad that I think we have the right person to continue supporting the criminal justice system in a more focused manner, and also help to be the back end support for these efforts in this group.
Mhm.
I don't know, Rick, if you want to say anything, or Johnny's, if you want to say anything.
I feel like we
No.
covered it.
I
All
think you
right.
covered it. Rick's awesome.
Yes, Rick is awesome. So the next topic is the JAG grant. Now
Looks like
I'm on,
there's a question. Sorry, Perry.
oh,
Oh, yes, Peter.
Perry, that's great news. Thank you so much, Rick, for doing that. What's the market like right now for somebody to backfill the position? But yeah, have any idea what kind of timeline that is?
so the market was challenging last year when we did some recruitment for the applications administrator position. This is actually a higher than that level. So we're hopeful that it'll be better than last year.
Mhm.
And I'll be able to, I feel pretty good about this. So I think it'd take probably, best case scenario is it's going to take us about 2 to 3 months.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Yes.
The next thing was software improvements funded by JAG grant. And I don't know if Kayla is still with us.
Yeah, Harry, would you
Okay.
like me to chat a little bit about
You
this?
know, I think if you could provide them with the bigger picture of the JAG grant, because
Yeah.
I'm only able to address one piece of it.
For sure. And I think it's one of the reasons I wanted to attend today to hopefully see if you all had some time for a conversation about an approach I'm thinking of how we spend some of that money. So the JAG grant was $250,000 of support that we received through the state and federal government for some of our justice project work. We've divided the budget into 3 categories. So a portion of the budget is going to fund the facilitator for the broader IPRTF, and I'm hopeful that sort of portion of their time is dedicated on sort of progress track, helping the group figure out metrics for project tracking for the Justice Project initiative. So not necessarily performance of the criminal justice system, but overall sort of how is the county doing on our Justice Project initiatives? What are the timelines? How are we reporting that out to the community? And so the facilitator will have some of this grant funding attached to their contract for some of those purposes. In addition to that, we have a carve out of the budget that's going to fund IT software, hardware training to help Rick and Perry and their team get all the tools they need to analyze this criminal justice data and continue to do their good work. And then we have about $30,000 that's reserved for I mean, it's somewhat flexible, but the idea is sort of data analysis, informatics, more on the policy side, which I think is what this group's been craving. Like, how are we making decisions about what data we track, that sort of thing. At one time, there was a discussion about sort of possibly hiring a county staff person to do the front facing side of this work. And I think that's still very much on the table. But in the short term, I think we'd like to get started by using a consultant contract or something of that nature to just further define the work. So we have about $30,000 that we could apply towards that. And I would say it's not really set in stone, sort of which department or place or scope of work we pursue. So was really interested in hearing this group's feedback. I think in order to make forward progress, my impression is that we need to get to some clarity about exactly which metrics we're trying to track. And that's when, for years, sort of one of the places that we stalled out a little bit. And I think, I don't know if this group in itself wants to develop those metrics, if we want to have a consultant, use this $30,000 to have a consultant come in and help guide a discussion and decision-making structure about what those metrics are for the data that we have. But sort of whatever that first step is, we could certainly use this funding for that and sort of want to offer it up to the committee about what you think the best sort of next step is.
That's very helpful, and thank you. Tank, you've got your hand up. Let me ask you to chime in.
Sure. One of the things that I want to make sure as we have these conversations with regard to analyses of different data and where that data is coming from and where that data is collected and where it's collated and how it's pushed out is this conversation or the notion of inviting perhaps maybe the psychology department or the sociology department at Western Washington University. I would like to see somehow that perhaps maybe we could begin some thoughts about contracting or partnering with them as well for the long term, because as we think about these different systems, it's always great to get a third party, especially in my mind, academic perspective about how we're using the data. So I would like to always keep that in mind.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sounds like that's a good idea. Other comments from Kayla? I mean, about what Kayla was saying, or questions for Kayla? Well, Kayla, I think that you are leading into, Perry, was that a hand raise? Yes, go ahead, Perry.
Oh, Peter had the hand raised.
Peter, I'm sorry, yes. I'm
Thanks.
looking at you and calling you the wrong name.
That's okay.
Kayla, in your recitation there of where money was coming from and such, it didn't seem to account for what I'm remembering from the implementation plan, which had $350,000 per year, as I recall, dedicated to these positions. And just wondering what your thoughts are on that. My understanding from Barry is that those funds were allocated last year for that. And as I recall, it was from the general fund.
So
we sound familiar?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So we did allocate the funds for the systems administrator position, which is the portion of that $350,000 that is from the general fund that has been approved by the county council. The remaining pledge there has not been budgeted. And my recommendation would be that we take this first step to try to further define the project before we bring on a full-time FTE to undertake this work. So my recommendation would be to take this first step and then have some further discussion about the remainder there. I don't feel like we're necessarily in a place to hire someone to undertake this work without further definition about sort of what the work plan is.
Well, this is leading right into my hopes for this meeting. So Kayla, I hope you can stay as long as possible. I would certainly welcome your important input. As you may remember, 2 months ago when we met, we talked about what was working and what wasn't working and how we could kind of improve this committee. And I'm a newcomer, so I definitely want everyone to feel free to chime in. And I recognize I don't have all the history. but what I heard at that time was that there was a time when you had smaller work groups, particularly an IT work group, and a sentiment that that would be helpful to recreate. So I took that to Peter and Heather, the co-chairs, and then presented it to the steering committee. And they were very much in favor and did not feel it needed to go back through the full task force, because that was originally how the index committee was designed. And so today, what I was hoping to do at this meeting is to have a real down and dirty discussion of what our focus is, what the policy subgroup and the IT subgroup would be expected to accomplish, what the scope of their work would be, and what our overall goal is. So before I start, I'm just going to put out my, I don't think I'm totally Pollyanna-ish, but my perspective from the outside looking in is that I think we are at a unique place in time in Whatcom County with the passage of the Justice Implementation Plan to really design a interagency, I say community, but it's obviously not the whole community, but a data system that has interoperability and can support the Justice Implementation Plan. And it would be both the nitty-gritty of what's needed from the IT side with a comparable budget, and then the nitty-gritty of what's needed from Tank's point, the policy decide what is the data that we're going to need to evaluate the program's ongoing. And I'm very supportive of the use of consultants and whatever, but I want to throw that out to see if that resonates with anyone, or if I'm in my own orbit.
I can provide a little background, Bertie.
Sure.
I don't know if Caleb was able to as well, but the group was rather large when we started.
Right.
And one of the things that we learned was how important it would be to get some automated reporting going of additional jail information.
Right.
And so what we did is we kind of had this technical working group that got together, and it was about 6 of us.
Right.
And it was Bellingham Municipal Court. It was Caleb from the sheriff's office, and a couple of us from IT. And that small working group made a lot of progress, on a very focused topic.
Right. Right.
So I think once we identify what those focused topics are, we would split off into a technical working group and get it done.
Right. Right. So I think one of the issues, I'm just going to be upfront about it and frank, is I'm still a little struggling a little bit with the difference between us actually doing the work and making recommendations about what work ought to be done. And so sometimes it's hard for me to know where this committee fits in. And I would appreciate feedback on that, because there's a difference. The doing of the work takes budget and bodies and people, obviously, to be down there and able to do it. And planning for future work, once we had more people and budget, is a slightly different process. And I guess what I'm asking is, do we need both? I heard you, Kayla, saying, let's define what the work project is. So I'm kind of coming from the outside, I think, and asking questions. Peter, is your hand up
Yes.
newly? Yeah.
It is newly up. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm going to try to synthesize a few things that I've heard from Kayla, from you, and from Tank.
Okay.
It seems to me that, yes, it takes bodies to do this work. Kayla has an idea about how $30,000 could be spent to lead an effort to from the kind of the policymaker perspective and perhaps the technical side to get policymakers the information that we need to decide whether these programs are working well to divert people from our jail, what is happening to individuals, you know, perhaps 3 years before they're cycling through the jail and 3 years after, all of those things. It's a lot of work to figure all that out, and we could use a consultant to do that. The Center for Business and Economics up at Western are very interested in working with us. To Tank's point, they're vitally interested in doing that. They're very well set up to help us, and there are some really interesting work being done in other jurisdictions that they could that they could look at, learn from. They can advise this group and our fine people in IT and over at the health department, Jeremy and Amy, and on these matters, and work with lead the effort that's going to be necessary. And perhaps that happens through this group. I do not know, but I think all those things can happen.
Okay. Caleb.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I apologize. I have a 3 o'clock that I need to jump off for as well. I too struggled with the whole idea of, is the index, you know, meant to be a reporting body, or is it the actual body that does the work? So that's, you know, one of the things that really hits right at the heart of the question for where I was at with the index. So I think you're on the right track. To me, and this is just the world according to Caleb, index is something that is, you know, sort of responsible for making liaison with the task force as a whole. It's responsible for taking, you know, guidance and direction for the task force and leading the discussion about what kind of work is being done. But it is not the ultimate location where the actual work is being done. That's done at more of a lower and more specific level. That's just my take on it.
Appreciate that. Kayla.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, appreciate that, Caleb. No, I'm not official member of this group, and I'm just sort of an interloper today. But I think I hear that, and I also you know, now that we have, we have so much vision around the justice projects, we will have both the IPRTF and the JPOP, which will be sort of reporting and oversight bodies that I don't know that an additional, like, my perspective is an additional layer or a committee like index that would just purely serve to be sort of a reporting and oversight function might be duplicative with what the JPOP will provide. So I wonder, I guess just would want to talk more about that.
I think that's always worthy of a discussion. My 2 cents worth is that the JPOP is another very large committee similar to the IPRTF itself. And I think my experience with committees like that is they're good places to have broad discussions at the same time when you're really trying to get down and focus with a consultant on what's the best kind of data and this and that. A smaller work group made up of people more familiar can be useful in bringing it out. And I guess one of the points I want to raise is I've had a couple of discussions with the health department, and as I'm sure most of you know, they are overlapping in some areas of the work that we are wanting to do. And in other areas, not so much. And my sense is involving them with the work that's coming directly out of the Whatcom County Executive IT office is important in areas like interoperability and making sure that we're getting data definitions that are the same, and a lot of sort of cooperative issues that are important. And I'd be interested, Perry, in your comments on that. And I noticed that Jeremy's here as well from the health department. So one of the things I think the JPOP and the IPRTF can do is bring a little bit larger level of community involvement to the Whatcom County executive involvement, which could be a good thing when we want interoperability and to work with that. It's not intended to make for extra work or supplant the autonomy of the IT department. So I just would be interested in kind of representing the folks I met with at the health department in this conversation, since neither one of them could be here today. Although Jeremy, you were, I didn't meet directly with you. So comments from Perry or others, or Caleb, on the past, what the working relationship was with like the mental health folks and the who also we need on board with IT being able to work with us.
I guess I can start, but I'll just kind of keep it simple. So outside of the task force and these efforts, county IT, supports and works with the health department and all the other departments in the county. We've done a lot of stuff with Jeremy over the years.
Right.
So I think, the relationship, the collaboration that's needed is there.
Okay. Other comments from folks?
I guess I would say, to just wrap up the perspective from our office about sort of what would be most helpful for accelerating the work at this point is, if this group came up with sort of a written document about sort of what do you need, what is it, what data, what metrics, what are the first priorities for measuring how our system is. Is it what cases the prosecutor's filing? Is it the housing status of people discharging from the jail? Like, what are the initial priorities from a policy perspective?
Right.
That would be sort of one way to move forward, and that the community working on that. If hey, the second option would be sort of just hiring a consultant to help the group work through that issue. I have an emergency call from my house, so I'm gonna step away for a minute.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I'm not sure it has to be either or with the consultant. I think a consultant potentially could work with a subgroup of this committee, or for that matter, the whole committee. In the in the structure that we brought to the steering committee and that came out, it had both an IT subgroup and a policy subgroup. And I think the intent behind this, and I'm interested in feedback, is that we're all very busy people, and it's hard to get everybody attending all of these meetings all the time. And so if we had a subgroup that was most interested and had expertise in developing policy and program evaluation and that kind of thing, that might be a smaller group of different people than the subgroup that is more the IT definite, down and dirty, how do you create interoperability and all the other IT issues. So the hope was to find a way that everybody wasn't having to show up multiple times every month or 2 months, for discussions that didn't necessarily directly involve them, by definition, the work group's work comes back to this committee for discussion and approval. You know, because they are just work groups. They are not official committees. So comments on that. I didn't want to form any of these without endorsement and feedback from this committee, whether or not you felt it was the direction in which to go.
I just have a simple comment on that. I would refer to it as a technical working group as opposed to
Sure.
an IT.
That is
Because really, it needs to be a mix of subject
Okay.
matter experts and
Okay.
technology folks. So,
Okay.
and that, again, we worked very effectively with Caleb and IT.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was some management from Bellingham Municipal Court. So, and again, we met like almost weekly, every other week.
Okay.
And so I think the whole idea is, this is a big ship we've got going here, and we need
Yes, it
these
is.
small speedboats that are zooming
Right.
around getting things done.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that because it sounds like maybe instead of arbitrarily creating two, we have one work group that is labeled, as you suggested, technical, and it addresses both pieces of it. What is the data we need? What are the priorities? And how do we get developing that? Is that what you're
Well,
suggesting?
I think what data do we need really comes from above.
Okay.
We need to know
Yeah.
what questions are being asked at the
Right.
policy level.
Right.
And then we can help translate the question to, is the data there, and what data can help answer that question. But I really
Okay.
think the questions need to come down from the higher level group.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's helpful. And then what about the interoperability? Because I know that that is an incredibly important issue if we're going to follow people over time and involve more than one agency's touching of the individual. Is that a piece of the technical?
I think, yes, and I think, as county IT is working with the different criminal justice system departments, we're always looking for how are we going to integrate the stuff between the systems. Most of these systems are really standalone systems, but they do have opportunities for integrations and things like that, or import exports. True interoperability would be everybody's in one big system, but that's
Right.
just
That's pretty
not going
unlikely.
to happen.
No, I know.
I think Jeremy's going to add
There's
to
a
it.
Yes, Jeremy.
there's a massive administrative tax that comes along with that. What is being asked of the justice system isn't normal. The system is designed to work in one direction. It doesn't, there's no existing mechanisms. It's not like a hospital or clinic system. So when information is being shared between medical facilities, there is an established federal rule set of how that works in order to facilitate things like billing, for example.
Right.
Disease surveillance, all these kinds of things. Law enforcement has some regulations. With the information available to me at this time, it is not as robust as the medical one. At an administrative level, there would need to be significant FTE allocated to the tracking, understanding, reconciliation, and signing of agreements between organizations to make sure everyone's dealing cards are at the table and to reduce administrative barriers, because the technical challenge will already be significant. The administrative one that gets missed a lot, and one that we discovered the hard way time and again on the public health side, is that there's a lot of work that goes into making sure all senior leadership is signed into and agreeing on how information is shared and why.
No, I think that's an important component, and I would think that it is different within the actual agencies within Whatcom County versus when we're reaching outside of that. For example, if we want data from the Opportunity Council or from a mental health organization, that would be a separate issue than within the departments within the county. Is that correct? Yeah, I see some head nodding.
It depends. Again, each industry is different. And so, for example, well, I'm not going to give examples, but there are instances where organizations that exist locally, you think would be a very short path to get integrating and sharing information, have turned into sometimes years long escapades. And
Right.
through it's no one's fault. It's just a lot of moving parts once we get into the administrative and regulatory parts of it.
Right. Well, I appreciate the heads up. And then Peter.
Jeremy, what sort of skill type is it that for this administrative regulatory function, what sort of hire would we be looking at?
Project management and someone that can interact with and get actual information from applicable legal authority. So that's to say, whoever county legal counsel is, and being able to navigate the CFRs, RFWs, all the really nitty gritty legal jargon that goes into how this stuff does not work. Because that's going to be, contention is the wrong word. What we're doing is new. And so there isn't really a clear roadmap. Finding someone that is versatile and skilled enough to keep an eye on the macro goal, but also intuitive enough to be able to read through certified codes of Washington and go, oh, that's kind of what that means. This is who I should talk to.
I see. Very good.
Okay. Well, so I just want to reflect the conversation for the sake of the person who's going to be moving forward and reflecting this to the steering committee and the IPRTF. I want to represent us well. My sense is that there is some agreement that a technical workforce could be helpful. I heard Kayla's request that we develop actually a written document that prioritizes what metrics would be the most important, the ones that we should prioritize first. I heard the need for policy folks that may be outside this index committee, giving some direction on what policies would be important for a program evaluation. I don't think it has to be outside this committee, but I heard that suggested. And then I also heard the role of using consultants to help with this. Is that summarizing what people, am I listening on track or am I missing things?
That all sounds pretty good. I think it would be called the technical work group. I still see the need for a policy work group,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I could definitely see using consultancy to lead us through some of this work. And it sounds like we're already using some of the monies from the JAG grant for our facilitator to do some of that. But I'm just going to say that after talking to James McCafferty up at Western, there are some really good potentials there. It is something that the implementation plan asks for us to use local universities. They could be exceedingly helpful. And then I also want to just note what I would, so that it comes back to us, what Jeremy was talking about there is critically important.
Totally.
At administrative regulatory functions, that is probably the only way that we're ever going to be able to follow an individual, anonymized or otherwise individual through the system in such a way that we will be able to actually determine whether these programs are having the effect that we're expecting. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we will take this forward. Our next meeting, I'm not adjourning the meeting. We have a couple other things on the agenda, but our next meeting is August 1st, and we will be back to reflect the further work in this direction. And if folks have additional ideas or comments, feel free to email me. I would be very interested in continuing the dialogue in between the 2 months, okay? And so unless anyone has additional comments, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. This is the IPRTF annual report, and you all got it as part of the packet in its entire length. The purpose of sending it out is obviously for your review. It also has the portion in it on the data. And so I would, as members of this committee, ask you to particularly review that short section and make sure you feel it reflects accurately the work of the last year. And if not, either email myself or Jill and myself with your recommendations, corrections, etc. It's a short timeline now because I believe this goes to the council at the end of the month. Is that right, Jill?
Yes, it goes to the full IPRTF at their June meeting on June 24th. So if anyone has any recommendations for changes, please get them to me by next Thursday, June 13th.
Right. I thought it was a fairly short timeline. Okay, and that then brings us to other business. And Peter, you had talked about wanting to report out from your meeting with the Council of State Governments. Was that do I have the right term? And do you still
Yes.
want to? Okay, I was.
Well, but there's not that much to report, but I will tell you that when we were all in Franklin County, Ohio, and talking with them about their data tracking and to see how they're doing it, to figure out whether their programs are working well, to divert people from incarceration and see the performance of their various programs. They were talking about their dashboards and such, and so I followed up with them and asked, so how's it going? Can we see your work? And they said, absolutely, you can, but it ain't perfect. And I got the recommendation to reach out to the Council of State Governments because they have a whole research branch in this area. And so I have contacted them. They are very interested in helping us find jurisdictions that have done this. Jeremy said that it was new territory. He may be entirely right, but it's a big country and everybody's interested in this. And so it is my hope that some of the jurisdictions that the Council of State Governments are pointing to, and there's more work to do there, will perhaps point us in some good directions, and so that we're not reinventing the wheel. So I'll
Excellent.
be able to report more on that later.
Okay. Any other comments? I do want to ask another question. I've had someone express interest in bringing a representative from our local NAMI and a person with personal experience with mental health and incarceration to this committee to discuss data that would be important from the behavioral health, mental health approach. And so I didn't do it this time because I wasn't sure we'd have enough time to allow them. And I would appreciate the will of the committee, whether this is a good use of our time, whether that belongs, and I think the information is important, but whether it belongs like in a policy subgroup that's going to be defining policy. I'd just be curious how people want to use the time of the index committee as a whole.
Looks
No
like
comment.
Peter's got his hand up. Bertie.
Oh, Peter, okay. I can't see it go down, but back up,
okay.
but I welcome your input, so.
It seems to me that the two things. One is always very important for us to hear from people with lived experience and frontline workers.
Exactly.
I personally feel like that would be really, that person should be invited to meet with the policy working group,
Mhm.
and leave our technical friends to do their work. And
That was
you
That
know,
was kind of my thought, but I don't, I'm new in this role and I didn't want to be wielding too large a hammer when people were wanting to make presentations. So I just want to,
sure.
the culture of this committee, and be sure that I'm following it. So,
Well, I have no idea what the culture is because I've only 3 meetings in,
right,
but
right. Well,
that's my
exactly.
opinion.
So,
Anyway.
okay. Is everybody else comfortable with that approach? Good. Sometimes, people they hear a forum and they just want to present, and it's always a challenge to use the committee time well. So, all right. Well, I thank you all. We just have a few minutes left. Does anyone have any other business before we ask for public comment? Perry, I want to thank you. I think your presentation helped a lot to clear up kind of where we're at and how things are approaching. And I appreciate yours and I appreciate Caleb's input. And so thank you.
Thank you. And I got a lot of help from Peter earlier this year. So
Oh, well, that's good.
thank Peter for all those meetings.
Oh, I know. I actually, we have a couple of minutes left and I in no way want to put you on the spot. So please don't feel like I'm trying to, but I'm just curious, when I got on this, I was sort of itchy to see what data we had. And is there any sort of baseline data on the jail or anything that is kind of ready for people on the task force to view, or is it still really premature?
I think it's premature, and a big part of it is we have an entire new administration in the sheriff's office,
Got it.
and we need to kind of we haven't really started working with them on their own data. And of course, in
I
IT,
see.
we don't own the data. It's the
Right,
departments that own the data.
right. Okay,
So I think we are, I know that Caleb and myself and John East and Rick are probably going to meet with Sheriff Tanksley and Under Sheriff Harris over the next month if we can work it in.
okay, okay. Well, keep us posted if you don't mind on the timeline as that develops. I can only imagine what it must be like for Sheriff Tanksley being, oh, there his hands up. I
There
won't
he
speak.
is.
There, I will definitely. I was thinking of what it would be like to inherit this whole new department and everyone want everything in the first 2 months, but go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to reemphasize how important it is to me, and I believe you all and others in the community, to really take a look at the data that we have and see how we could extract that data. And I know Jeremy with the Health and Community Services is doing a lot of work. So I am committed to this project and
Mhm.
trying to see how we could best bring this data out into the community to be as transparent as we can. So that's just not words. That's my heart. So
Right,
I
right.
I am
Well, I
committed to doing
appreciate
this.
that, and I kind of assumed that too, but I know all things take time, so.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, as long as I think if you keep us posted on the timeline, that helps because then people aren't banging on doors or we have something to say to community members when they ask us, so that's very helpful.
Will
All
do, and
right.
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Any other new business? Otherwise, Jill, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak?
We do have a couple of attendees. If you would like to speak to the committee, please virtually raise your hand now by selecting the raise hand icon. And no hands are raised, and I don't see any attendees in our conference room. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So the meeting is then adjourned, and we will see you all on August 1st. Thanks.